Well, good evening everybody and welcome back to my channel. I want to tell another story from my life, although this story has many connections. I want to tell a story of friendship and friendship across cultural divides, and I want to tell a story also about a saint in Xalapa in Mexico, San Rafael, Guizar y Valencia, and how he is interred at the Catédral Metropolitana de la Immaculada Concepción de Xalapa in Mexico. And there is so much to this story that I hope I can do it justice in a short video, and I'll do my best. I just have pages and pages of notes, but you will see a picture of the Catédral Metropolitana de la Immaculada Concepción de Xalapa on my cover, and I have been to this cathedral. In 2007 and 2008, I visited Xalapa. I also visited Veracruz. And there will be probably many more videos coming out of the connection I had with a friend there and this whole story. So in 2007 or so, might have been 2006, well, probably end of 2006, beginning of 2007, I made a pen pal on the computer in Mexico, and she was a little older than I was, she was herself divorced, and she was I think she was divorced. Yes, she was divorced. She had a son, and I think might have had some other children. I know for sure she had a son, and she was living in her mother's home, and her mother was in nursing care at the time. And she had had a very serious illness. Well, later I found out she had lung cancer is what she had, but she wouldn't tell me what she had. She said she had a very serious illness. She almost died, and therefore when I met her, she was very thin and frail. But we originally met and started writing emails, and we began a form of pen paling that way. And then eventually we began to talk on Skype, person to person. And so that was very cool. And I know I was very excited when I could hear out. She would have her window open. I could hear the cars and the activity of Mexican life, outside her window in my own home. And I just was amazed and excited. Well, we also had a connection with our faith. So I was Catholic, she was Catholic, and we experienced that in a little bit different ways culturally, but basically we were both Catholic, and that was something we had in common that drew us together. Now there's just so many things I can talk about from this friendship, and at some point Dora says, my friend Dora Nuñez, Dora says, well, you should come visit me in Mexico. And I said, well, why don't you come here? And she said, it's more complicated for me to go there. And actually she did work with people who were trying to regain their speech after strokes and some tutoring and things from her home, but she didn't make a whole lot. So she really didn't have the money to travel. And she also said in order to get a passport and the permits that she would need and things, it was much more complicated for her than it would be for me. So it made sense for me to go visit her. And I was married at the time, and she said, go ask your husband. And I said, oh, he's never going to want to go to Mexico. He's not going to do this. And she said, go ask. And I was like, okay. So I went and I asked him, and to my great surprise, he said, sure, that sounds great, let's go. I didn't think he ever would in 3 million years want to go. Well, so in 2007, we went to visit my friend Dora in Mexico, and we the whole trip is these are all separate videos. Trust me, because we had a crazy time. My friend said, "Don't go through Mexico City. There's another way to go through Houston. Don't go through Mexico City. Just don't do it." And my ex-husband and I, we had traveled quite a bit. We considered ourselves pretty savvy with flying and everything at the time. And we said, "Oh, we know how to fly. We know how to navigate this. We'll be fine." Oh, no. Well, anyway, I found out more information in the meantime. Tonight I just found out tons of information about this. But it seems that the airport in Mexico City has a bad habit of overbooking flights, and we had a problem when we got there because they said, "Well, the flight is overbooked." And we said, "Well, can we get a flight out today?" And they're like, "No." "Can we get a flight out tomorrow?" "No." "A few days from now?" "No." "Next week?" "No." And so basically they were just like cutting us off right there, even though we'd paid for our tickets. We had a whole trip set up. We had reservations. So my friend had a son whose name was Alvaro, and he lived in Mexico City. So she got a hold of her son, and her son made miracles happen. So he called people at the airport, and I don't know who all he talked to. For a while, we were getting nowhere fast. My back was bothering me trying to walk through that stupid, it was a really long airport, and it was just crazy. We were going from one end to the other end to the other end, and we were going through their security about 5 times. And finally I said, "I'm just going to sit on the floor and cry." I've had it. And so anyway, she got a hold of her son, who was an adult, and he got a hold of somebody at the airport, and we had the jefe came and escorted us onto a plane and into seats, and it was like the parting of the Red Sea. So we did get flights, and we got there. Our luggage was lost, but my friend was amazing. She was so amazing. And she got on the phone, and in Spanish was like, blah, 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 blah. And boy, our luggage appeared on the doorstep the next day. Not a problem. Not touched, not nothing. And so anyway, she was amazing. So we stayed, she was staying at her mother's home there in Xalapa, while her mother was in nursing care. She was elderly. And so anyway, we went to various places and visited, but one of the things we did was we went to downtown Xalapa, and there is a great big cathedral down there, which I've rattled off the name a couple times, but it's big and it's beautiful. And we went to several churches in Xalapa, including Church Iglesia de San Jose, I believe. And anyway, more about all this later. It was such a packed trip. And then we went back in 2008 too, and there was even more there. So this is many videos to come, trust me. But it was so interesting, and we learned so much, and we learned so much culturally. So anyway, one of the things we did was we visited the cathedral in downtown Xalapa, which is this big, beautiful cathedral that you see on the cover photo, or on the cover of my video. And we were told Xalapa has its own saint, and his name is San Rafael Guizar y Valencia. And so I wanted to talk about this saint because I think his body was interred there, but if it wasn't his body, I know his heart, which was found to be incorrupt, is there in a reliquary or whatever. in that cathedral. So also, while I was there, I did get a rosary. I got it blessed there. And I was there in 2007, about end of October in 2007. So he was canonized in 2006 by Pope Benedict. So he was very newly canonized. She said, Dora told me that they sometimes would affectionately call him El Gordito. And I found out that because somebody called me Gordita, and I went, huh? And I thought they were making fun of me, but because it means fat. But they actually use terms like that as terms of endearment and affection in their culture. And it's not at all meant to put people down. And this was something I learned. Well, anyway, San Rafael, Guizar y Valencia was born in April 26, 1878, died June 6, 1938. He was made Bishop of Veracruz in 1919. By the way, we've visited the port city of Veracruz as well. And he went through very severe anti-clerical persecution during the Mexican Revolution. And I ask about, there's just so much to tell you that I'll never get it in this whole video, but I looked up about what was it about the Mexican Revolution that they persecuted the Catholic Church very severely. You know, most people think of Mexicans as being Catholic. A lot of us that don't know much here in the United States think that way. And they are not all Catholics, because Judaism exists there, Islam exists, so they have relative freedom of religion right now, but it's also kind of on paper. So they had a dictator for many years, and the Catholic Church was a heavy presence in Mexico. But then they had the Mexican Revolution, and the revolutionaries were very jealous of the Catholic Church because they didn't want the people having their allegiance to Rome. And we've had some of this in the United States here too, where Rome is seen as a rival to the country, which it's not really. I mean, I think we've coexisted peacefully with the Catholic Church for many, many years, including having some Catholic presidents. But sometimes there are factions that see it as a rival for people's devotion, affection, whatever, and some groups will think that everything has to be, all your devotion and your loyalty has to be to the state and not to a religious authority. So the Catholic Church is often seen as a rival and a very powerful one. So we've had some of this in the United States too. But in Mexico, they started with heavy restrictions on the church, on worship, on the sacraments, and eventually this erupted into a very bloody civil war. And then there were peasant guerrilla activity, the Cristeros. If you've heard, some Catholics will recognize Viva Cristo Rey. This was their slogan, and it finally erupted in horrible violence, and many Catholic clergy especially were executed, and very, very horrible persecutions. Now, eventually, the current state of Mexico is not against the Catholic Church, but they did go through a very bloody and awful period. And so now the current Mexican government is a secular state, but it does give its people the right of freedom of any religion. So Islam also is there, there's Judaism there, very pluralistic, just like here in the United States. But some people say it's only on paper, and there's different things that exist in different areas down there. So the bloody part was in 1920, and and so then finally the restrictions, the early restrictions on priests and things were in 1917, and then it got really bad in 1920, and in 1992 finally all this was overturned. And so it's basically, the Catholic Church exists, people worship freely. I went to Mass with my friend Dora, and I could make a video about that alone because there were cultural differences. It was very interesting. And I will talk more about the churches of Mexico that I saw, and there's some things to tell you about that. There's just more videos to make, let me tell you. But all this made me think of some of the things that the United States is going through right now. And unfortunately, if freedom of religion is not protected and promoted, something like what happened in Mexico in 1920 can happen, and it just becomes violent, bloody, horrible, and scars from this exist to this day in Mexico. In this day, 78% of Mexicans are Catholic, but there are other religions, and there's Protestant missionary efforts down there, and sometimes that's met with resistance. It's just hard to describe the entire thing, but many scars still exist from this violent, bloody persecution in 1920. And San Rafael, Guizar, y Valencia was very much a part of this. So he spent many years in exile. And what I mean is, in exile, he didn't get to be in his home. And he had to flee for his life many, many times. The reason I call him a secret agent saint is that he had to disguise himself for his life and for his safety, and in order to reach the people and minister to the people, especially to give sacraments to the dying. And so he founded a secret seminary in Mexico City. So he was involved in the education of future priests, and he was very involved in the sacraments, validating marriages, and also especially in giving sacraments to the dying. He was much loved by the people. At one time he had to flee Mexico. He was in the southern United States until, I think it said 1919 maybe. I don't know if I have that date right. And he also went to Guatemala for a while and was invited to Cuba, and actually did quite a bit of missionary work in Cuba. So I will put some links in for this saint of Xalapa, Mexico, and let you read, including, I'll put the Vatican biography of him in there, and I might put something on the Mexican Revolution and the cathedral, so that you can read all this. It's a beautiful cathedral, and they use gold leaf, a lot of gold leaf in their cathedrals. It creates like a sense of when the sun comes in and it shines on it, it just has an otherworldly effect. And there's a lot more that I can tell you about the faith, the Catholic faith in Mexico, and sometime we'll talk about that. So I hope this was an interesting video for you, and I feel like I didn't tell nearly enough, but I did see the tomb of San Rafael. The rosary that I bought and had blessed there actually did have, like on the centerpiece, usually it's got the Virgin Mary, it had him on the reverse side. I don't have this rosary anymore because my life was very hard and I lost many possessions, and I just don't have it anymore, but I wish I did. And so one of the things I also learned when I was there was a lot more about El Dia de los Muertos, because I was there at the end of October, so that particular holiday is in the beginning of November. And one of the things that the Mexican people do, it's sort of like, this holiday is sort of like saying, death is not the final answer. Death can take our loved ones, but it cannot take our love, it cannot take our memory, and it cannot take our connections and traditions. And so what they do on this particular holiday is mock death and laugh in its face and remember their loved ones. And so I feel, in a way, that is my relationship with my friend Dora Nuñez, who did pass away from lung cancer many years ago, shortly after the election of Pope Francis. And she was very excited to see she said, finally, a Latino Pope, Hispanic Pope, and she was so happy. So I'll end here, I think, and wrap it up, and I'll put some links in for you. But there's so much from this trip that I can tell and will tell. It occurred to me tonight that this is I could get all kinds of interesting videos out of this. So I hope that you enjoy the story. And also, it really made me think about faith. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. All right. Hasta luego.